Okay, everybody, we're just waiting for our guests to arrive. Much love to everybody joining us today. Give me a second while I get everything situated, okay? Give me a second. What's up, everybody? We're just waiting on our guests to join. Give us a second while we get everything situated. This is going to be a dynamic show, you guys. We have Eric, aka Shaka, here. He spent 12 years in prison for bank robbery. And I thought this was an important conversation to have. Because, we don't really get to meet that many bank robbers. We watch movies about bank robbers, but we don't get to actually talk to that many, right? Bank robber, okay? I mean, we didn't see the Wild Wild West and all sorts of stuff, like all these different TV shows where you show the cowboys robbing the banks and doing this and the other, but you ain't met like an actual bank robber. You're gonna meet one today. So I just want to, but unfortunately, like, so, we gotta like, there's a little bit of people who got a little older, and so we're gonna like, get the technology straight. So I gotta like, make sure you know to join. So just give me a second. He's gonna be here in a second, okay? Give me a second. Okay, y'all, we old. We still trying to get it together. We trying to get him in the studio. We a little bit over. Right. We're a little old, so just bear with us, okay? If you're here, I want you to put something in the chat. Let me know you're here. And you're ready for the show. Just give me a second, y'all. It's just old country pumpkin house of beans. right, so while we trying to get Eric to like get online, I said want to sing y'all a song. Go ahead, sing a song. I'm a little princess singing in the night. I'm a little princess in the night. Okay, so y'all got to hear it. Okay. Give me 1 second, y'all. We're trying to get it together. I'm sorry, y'all. We old. You know, so he talking about the 80s, y'all. So you know technology is, you know. So we got to get it together. Give me 1 second. Okay, we finally got him in here. All right. Okay. What's up, Eric? How you doing?
I'm doing all right. How you doing? How you?
All right. So first, hold on. Let me.
I'm getting a lot of feedback.
Okay. All right. So. Okay. Let me get all the sound together. Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, it's echoing.
Yeah, that's because you got to hang up the phone.
Huh?
You got to hang up the phone.
Hang the phone up?
Well, no, hold on. Hang up. All right, hang up the phone call that you're on with me.
Okay. I was like, hang up. Oh, wait a minute. That's right.
Okay. Check two. Okay, so you can hear me here. Okay, and then okay, so I should be able to hear you. Okay, check one, check two. But okay, you can hear me on the internal ones. Okay, okay.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Can you see me?
Can't see you now.
Okay, I do have a new phone, so work with me.
Hit the start cam button. You should see it on the bottom.
Okay.
Now we can see you. Now you can hear me. I can see you. We all trying to do this new technology.
Yes, yes, this is a new I just got this new phone, so I apologize.
But no, I'm not old. I'm just making it. I'm just pretend like I'm really not old. I'm young. So for everybody that is just for everybody that's here right now, we got 7 people in the chat for right now, but it's gonna grow. But I want you to explain and show everybody who you are, and give a brief introduction.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm Baba Shaka. Most of my friends call me Baba Shaka. I'm a native of Louisiana, Shreveport, Louisiana. I lived in practically I lived in Texas the majority of times of my life. I lived in Atlanta. I lived in LA. Um, I was been in prison 20 years of my life. 5 years in the state and 15 in the feds. Uh, yeah, that's basically it.
Okay, and so what brought you to prison? What happened to make you have to go to prison? What is that story? Like,
Okay.
what led you to that? What led you to 20 years in prison is a long time. What led you to that long amount of time in prison? You had to have done something terrible, which I
Okay. Well, actually, uh, when I was 16, I accidentally shot and killed my best friend. Um, come from the suburbs of what used to be the suburbs, but I come from the suburbs of Shreveport, Louisiana, and it was a bad choice that I made by one having a firearm at the age of 15 and 16 because we didn't need firearms in the suburbs. There was no gang problem, no gangs. Um, I didn't grow up with gangs. Um, they had bullies, but they were bullies with a polo shirt on or something like that. It wasn't anything like you have today or you've had in the last 30 years. And it was a situation in which me and my friend um, uh, we kept having altercations. And it was one summer, I never forget it. Matter of fact, it was like July 23rd, 1986. I was 16 years old. Um, headed, I was a sophomore, headed to be a junior, and it happened so fast. That particular day, I had after that, after that, that after that pressure of me pulling that trigger, I had to become a man overnight. Things changed in my life tremendously. So I shot him with a 22, and he panicked and ran about a block and passed out, and and he passed away, and I ended up getting 5 years manslaughter. That led me to going to one of the worst prisons in almost the world or the United States. I went to Angola State Penitentiary. So, like I said, I had to uh, become a man. Everything changed in my life at a blink of an eye. Uh, there was no crying. There was no, you know, I need mom, dad, none of that. You know what I'm saying? I had to go to prison, and so I ended up going to Angola prison, and using Angola prison like a university, meaning, just learning all different types of things. You know,
Wait,
um,
hold on. What is Angola prison? What's the difference between Angola prison and the other prison
okay,
that
well,
is up?
Angola prison, Louisiana State Penitentiary was once a slave. It was a slave plantation in the state of Louisiana. It's down in the mountains of and swamp, close to the Mississippi River. It was a plantation. It's huge. It's a city within a city. So it was very, very, very dangerous. Very, very dangerous. It was compared to Alcatraz and some of your more famous prisons. A lot of movies. They made a lot of movies at this prison in Angola. Uh,
I was, so did they make you like
that's
pick?
why they call it Angola, because of um, something dealing with the slaves or whatever. But yeah.
Angola's in Africa. I don't know why they called it. But so here's the question: did they make you pick cotton? Because I know in Texas TDC they make you pick cotton when you.
Yes, yes, we picked cotton. They had all white men on horses. We picked corn. We picked everything that we ate. It was a plantation. Um, you were forced to call him boss man, or boss sir, or free man, whole bunch of slave names. But yeah, free man, things of that nature.
So in essence, slavery still exists. It's just in the prison system, 100%, right?
Most definitely, particularly in the South, in the South, the states in the South, definitely. Mississippi, Parchman, in Alabama. I think they even have chain gangs in Georgia.
Okay, so I wanted you to continue to talk about that. I just wanted to like clear up for the audience like what Angola is and what that represents.
Yes, it's one of the most notorious prisons. It was a very, very, very dangerous prison. By the time I got there in the '80s, it was kind of watered down. I got there in '88. I was sentenced to 5 years flat, um, uh, which I think I may have got a break. I did get a break because it was a life taken. Um, so I got 5 years, and and then I went through the transformation of just learning prison. You know what I'm saying? Just learning the different things about prison. The do's, the don'ts. Like I said, it was a city within a city. It wasn't like you wasn't confined in a cell. At this point, you wasn't confined in a cell. While I was there, I was confined to a cell for 2 years for a riot that I was in. They had a riot, and my dumb ass, I was listening to some of the other convicts, talk about the trustees they buck, they protest about making the injection table, and and they was like, yeah, that's wrong. That's wrong. We ain't gonna do that. We ain't gonna stand for that. And I'm young, so I'm like, yeah, that ain't right. You know what I'm saying? My naive ass, I'm like, nah, that ain't right. That ain't right. And so they was like, when we go out, we ain't gonna work. So I had never been in a slave revolt or anything, but I'm like, okay, I'm with this shit. Like, okay, you know, like they say, standing on business. So I was like, okay, and man, when that European came on that horse, they came on them horses. They like, who ain't gonna work? And everybody was just still. Like nobody said nothing. It might have been like five guys threw their shovels down. And I just thought I was doing the right thing. I was like, man, that's wrong. I'm not, I ain't with that. It wasn't that I was being an asshole or trying to be militant. You know, I threw my shovel down, and man, they took us through some shit. I mean, for me to be young, I really experienced. Now that I look at it, and when I look back at it, um, I understand a lot. I understand a lot, which we're going to be talking about things that's not real versus things that's real, and and people, what they talk. What's the word? Sensationalizing, you know, revolutionaries and these things. But anyway, yeah, I end up going to one of the worst parts of the prison, which is Camp J. So I was in Camp J for
Is that considered like the hole or something like that?
yeah, that's the worst of the holes. There's so many different layers of the hole, but Camp J is the bottom of the pit. The bottom of the pit. That's where you have most of all the people that's back there that's killed guards, killed inmates, raped inmates. Um, they've done some of the most horrific things. So when you go back there, all you smell is feces because that's what they war with. They make zip guns. They make guns, and they war with feces by throwing feces out the gate, out of the cell, onto inmates or onto guards and things of that nature. You know what I'm
So
saying?
so so that's like mental illness, right? Do you think that the reason why they would do that is because of mental illness because they've been in there so
Definitely,
long?
they couldn't cope. They couldn't cope with the just being they couldn't cope with being on the compound, which is on the main yard. They call it the big yard, main yard, whatever. But they couldn't cope, um, and they just lost it. And being in those cells, some of those guys have been that back there like 20 years. They had two famous guys, and
Wait, in the hole for 20 years straight or just back and forth?
no, in a whole 20 years straight. They had some people been down 20 years straight. They had some guys who had been back there who um, been
Can
back there
you
since
explain the conditions of the hole? Because I'm like, everybody don't know what the hole really is.
the hole would be the size of your bathroom. Just imagine being in not I'm talking not the new bathrooms with the garden tub and the two sinks. No, I'm talking about the old bathrooms where you have a toilet, uh, and just a little bed on the side. It's kind of like what you see in some of the old movies of what prison was. Like you see the prisons of Alcatraz, and you see those old cells like Shawshank Redemption. That would be the hole.
So is there like light coming through there or just zero sunlight?
They have a light in the hallway that may work or may not work. I actually learned how to type. I got uh um my mother sent me a typewriter. I learned how to type under those conditions. Um, but they had a lot of people that wasn't going with the whole get along thing, and I'm gonna go work in the field. That was back there, but from being back there, a lot of people were mentally gone. I seen one man. I learned how to play chess in the hole. I had a guy who was in a cell next to me. Now we lock down 24 hours a day. You don't go to a kitchen. Everything you just in this one spot. So this one guy, he was like a lawyer or whatever, and he had been back there like 10 years, and he was good at law work. So he the one who told me about getting a typewriter. Um, I taught myself how to type. He taught me how to play chess back there. And we play chess by numbers and letters because there's no contact. The only contact there is when you have an hour out for shower. When you come out of your cell to walk up, there's maybe 15 cells on a range, um, and you have to walk up the hallway to go up to the shower, and that's where a lot of war was going on. Because when you walk up the aisle, they may have taken a paper clip and sharpened it down, and um, put it in their feces, burn it, and then took a magazine and made a hollow type of thing and spit it out, blew it out where it hits you like a dart, almost like a bullet. And if it had feces or whatever, magic shave, or they may had the shampoo bottle and they have the feces and magic shave and urine and old milk, and they might heat it up. There's ways that you could heat things up. You could do anything. You've seen it on YouTube. You've seen it on Facebook.
I don't
They
think
heat.
I have never heard of that. That is insane. That they
Yeah,
were making like tribe level darts using magazines and shooting them out and hitting
shooting
people probably with accuracy. And it's just,
accuracy. I mean pressure. I mean you have people. Man, I remember one time I was back there, and you get an hour out. You used to get an hour out in the hallway one at a time, and you run. The only exercise you're gonna get is to run up and down the hallway. For you want to do that for 55 minutes, and then you got 5 minutes to take a shower. Then you back into your cell for another 24 hours. So, you know, um, I remember this one guy. I never forget this. There was this guy named Outlaw, and he had dreads. And this was in the '80s. So they didn't. Back in the '80s, you didn't have fashion dreads. The way they do the no, only this was matted. This was what they call wicks, or like in Jamaica. There was no fashion. There was none of that stuff. But this guy, his name was Outlaw. So, and I began to talk to Outlaw because I was studying a lot of Black Panther material. I ran into um, Jama, which is the Black Gorilla family. So I was more interested in that whole thing. And he would tell me stories of things that happened back in 72, 71, because these were some of the people
wait, what time frame was this that you were in the hole? Was that in the 80s or 90s?
that was in the 80s.
And you were like a teenager
I was 18, 19,
in
20.
the hole with people that have been there for 20 years because
Yeah.
you said I don't want to do this, and you put just because you put your shovel down, not you didn't
No,
like.
well, it wasn't violent. I put my shovel down like I'm not gonna do this, and that's the worst thing that you can do in a prison. That's the worst that you can do in a prison when it comes to the administration. Besides, assaulting one of them. You know what I'm saying? It's to be um, the type of person to say you're not gonna do it, because um, if everybody does that, um, then
Prison
you
riot.
know there's either prison riot, there's a revolt. I mean, then you can actually change some shit. You know what I'm saying? But they're gonna make a example, just like back in slavery. When one person ran, they didn't just bring him back and give him some greens and cornbread. They hung them, they tarred and feathered them. They did all these different things. You know what I'm saying? So it's like it's conditioned. You know, people are. I always said it's like in prison is I. This is crazy. In prison, you could. I've been in some of the worst prisons. I've been the federal prison in Lompoc, which is on a military base. I've been in Atwater, USP Atwater. All these are maximum security federal prisons. Leavenworth, Atlanta, maximum security, and you have some of the most notorious
How
prisoners.
how do you end up in all these other prisons though? Like how do
Okay, so
you?
we gonna get to how I end
Okay,
up in those other prisons. What
okay,
I'm
okay.
talking about
Are
is
they shipping you around like to go here and
no,
there?
but
Okay.
what I'm trying to talk about is how they condition the prisoners. Some of the most notorious prisoners in the state are in this prison, and then some of your most sick Hannibal Lecter like prisoners are in um they're in what they call the hole in Camp J. You understand?
Yeah, yeah. So what's it called? Angola wasn't the worst hole.
Well, Angola hole, the hole which is they call Camp J, was one of the worst places you want to be. If you go through and make it through Camp J, by the time you get to the main prison, you got stripes if you made it through there.
So how long did you stay in the hole for that particular offense where you dropped down the
20 I stayed in there for about 25 or 26 months. 2 years.
Man, why
It,
was I thinking that you're gonna say 26 days? What?
no, 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 no. I mean, you actually find yourself, you fight and struggle to um, maintain maintain some type of sanity, because everybody's holding conversations with themselves in their cell. You hear regular conversations that, listen, you hear regular conversations. A guy's having a conversation with his wife, and they're arguing, and he's either reacting, re-reacting, um, to abuse. I told you, didn't I tell you to go in there? And I told, it's like that. So imagine I'm a young kid. Like, I'm a young kid. I got a flat
18?
top. Look, I got a flat top. I'm brown skin, no hair, no facial hairs. You know what I'm saying? Um, I was, I probably was about 100 and maybe 30 pounds, 140 pounds. You know what I'm saying? I knew what I had to do to be in the prison now. I knew that, in Rome, you do as the Romans, meaning that, if I had to kill, um, then that's what it was to stay alive. You know what I'm saying? So once I psych myself up in my mind that, okay, whatever comes to me, this is how I'm gonna react to it. You know, um, and that's how it was. But I mean, you're in a, you there's several conversations. People are having conversations with themselves. It's not quiet back in the hole. No, it's not quiet.
Even at night, so like sleeping and stuff like that. How do you sleep?
No, I mean, you can't monitor what the next psycho. You can't. You're not. You can't monitor what they're saying or what they're doing. You know what I'm saying? Um, it's crazy.
You know what's kind of scary is that a lot of people get out, right? So you got out, but and you got out with your mind straight. But imagine these women are dating these guys and not knowing that they might be traumatized by being in there for so long, and then they getting in debt. But that's gonna be, we'll get into that later on. But that is something else. I never even thought about that. Wow. So and
Yeah.
wow. So you went into the hole and there was a bunch of people in there for 20 years and this, that, the other. They're shooting darts out with feces on it. You gotta run. You want to exercise, but you gotta run
You
past.
want to run. For the most part, I was a youngster. These were older guys. These guys been down a long time. Um, um, so once I started seeing some guys run, that was part of their programming. So I started doing that. I started learning how to run. And then it was a challenge for me to be able to run the whole 50 minutes. To just keep running the whole 50 minutes. And I kind of stayed further away from a cell, so can't nobody reach out and grab me, or maybe hit me in the face with some feces or something. Try not to talk to people. Uh, um, Try not to just have no type of interaction with nobody to give them a reason to go off or something. And if they did say something crazy, I'm like, okay, I'm not definitely not finna get in an argument with your crazy ass. I'm not gonna do that. I'm just gonna just lay low and not say anything, and hopefully one of the other crazy guys will interact with you. And I'm not finna do it. You know what I'm saying? Because it was just insane to me. You know what I'm
So
saying?
you made it out the hole. All right. So once you made it out the hole, right now you've been traumatized. You went into the hole probably not as traumatized, but now you come out traumatized, and now
Well,
you go
I
into.
went in the hole. That's right. I went in the hole, not really understanding what was going on. But after coming out of this place called Camp J, I realized that it shit was serious. You understand what I'm saying? Definitely didn't want to go back, um, and I understood why some of these big guys, some of the guys is working out in the iron pile that look like big Tukey with the big muscles, and I understood why they didn't want to go back there. You know what I'm saying? Because there was a place to break your spirit. It was a place to break your spirit. So, being out in prison, that was kind of like almost like freedom, you know what I'm saying? But it wasn't freedom, So what I did was I got out, and, I did kind of was like a celebrity a little bit, because they was like, man, they called me, I had a nickname, they called me Teenager. So they was like, man, Teenager, he just come from Camp J. And they looking at me like, damn, and he out here, and you know what I'm saying? So I went off into getting off into the drama club, learning how to act, dealing with drama, poetry, things of that nature. I had a friend who was my best, was like my mentor. His name was Wally Moo. He passed away. He was a Black Panther, and he was in a wheelchair. So he was a real famous guy in New Orleans. That he was a Black Panther out of the Ninth Ward. They had this big war against the government out of the Ninth Ward projects, the Desire projects in New Orleans back in the early '70s, and he was part of that. He was a bank robber or whatever, but he was kind of like the scholar of the prison. Like he would be somebody like Ben Yakinen, he would be somebody like, he was a scholar or whatever. And he was an older man, white beard, white hair. So he was kind of like my mentor. So he basically, used to just whisper in my ear. I mean, when I say whisper in my ear, I mean, because he's in a wheelchair, of course I got to squat down, or I had to be sitting down and listen to the stories that he was telling me about the Black Panther Party, and about things that we needed to do. You telling me about politics, some things that I had no idea. I'm from Shreveport. They country as hell in Shreveport. They was country then, and they country now. You know what I'm saying? So the things that he was telling me about, Karl Marx, George Jackson, Jonathan Jackson, coming from out of Shreveport, come on. They weren't even talking about Malcolm X. I mean, you understand what I'm saying?
Right,
So
right.
he was my mentor. So being he was my mentor, I became like a apprentice, kind of, so to say, And now that I look at it, I became indoctrinized, because he told me some things. The things that he told me, they was up here. He would tell me
Yeah,
things like,
you're 18 years old, so you're very impressionable at the same time.
yeah, and he was a very respected. To be in a wheelchair, he was very, very micey. You're not from Louisiana if you don't know who Micey is. Micey was like a Huey P. Newton. As a matter of fact, for people who know anything about anything revolutionary, he was friends with Mark Exit. If you Google Mark Exit, Mark was a guy who was in the movement, who um, took over Howard and Johnson in New Orleans. He was a sniper, and he killed I think the not the chief of police. He killed like the chief of the fire department. I think when the chief or something come out of the precinct, he was shot in the head from all the way down somewhere else, because of how high Howard and Johnson set. Mark Exit is, yeah, kind of. Mark Exit was more of a successful, like the guy in Dallas, Malik. Mark Exit was more successful than what that brother tried to do. But anyway, um, and he used to tell me things like, uh, he was like, man, they got gangs where you from, and I said, well, when I left the street, they ain't have no gangs. When I went to school, I went to a Catholic school. I went to and and everybody dressed preppy. Everybody was, like preppy. You didn't have any Bloods and Crips. You didn't have any of these. You didn't have none of that. So when he was telling me that, I was like, "What?" He said, "Yeah," because he kept up with stuff, um, and he told me, and he was like, you know, they're initiating these guys. They're initiating them by having somebody ride around with the lights out, and if you blank your lights to tell them that your lights is out, then the people that they're initiating would drive double back and come and shoot your car up and kill you.
I remember that. I remember like when there was like a whole thing like do not like if you hear somebody blinking your lights, do not like yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So he was telling me about that, and he was like, man, when you get out, you need to let them know, man, that instead of tearing the community up by selling crack, you know, and he gave me, I'm gonna use the word, he gave me the
Mark
dynamics, the game on dealing with bank robbery. Now I wasn't in there for bank robbery, but I'm listening to these stories that he told me.
at 18 years old as a young man that and he's like a revolutionary, but then you're
Exactly.
respecting him as a revolutionary.
He
And
was a
then,
he was no doubt he was a revolutionary. He's 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 tried and tested. He was amongst other some of the other brothers like Matula Shakur, Sekola, um, um, Huey P. Newton, Geronimo Pratt.
so was he an ex Black Panther?
He was not. He was a Black Panther. He wasn't an ex Black Panther, but he was a Black Panther.
So he's a Black Panther and he's teaching a young 18-year-old boy that just got out of like segregation and like the whole about robbing banks before you get out of jail.
Yeah. Well, it had, it has some logic to it a little bit. I mean, like he just basically was saying, hey, instead of them selling crack, they need to go in these banks. These banks are insured by FDIC. There's no security, and if there is security, it's one person. They could go in. And the chances of a person selling crack to get 100 or 200, 100 or 200 or $300,000.
Right, little to nothing, right. You had to like work your behind off to get that. Right.
They're like penny ante hustlers almost kind of.
He like bumped that. We need to tell all these people that's doing it to go ahead and start robbing these banks, which is pretty much what they did in the Western times back in the old days. They used to rob banks, like the that's why you get like the cowboy stories. A lot of the cowboy stories were like when they would say wanted, it was like black cowboys that were robbing the white banks.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, like
No,
they
I didn't
actually
know
have
that.
movies about that. Yeah.
Yeah, so he would just tell me, he was like, hey man, if they need something to do, because these dudes, I mean, these guys were terrorizing the community all around the United States. Think about it, like all around you can't name a state, Detroit, Chicago. Um, they were terrorizing. They were terrorizing. When gangs. Some cities already had gangs, but where I was from, definitely didn't have gangs. You
So
know what
so
I'm
real
saying?
quick, so you went in what year you go in? Like 80.
I was in '86 is when the incident happened, and when I turned 18 is when I got transferred and sent to prison.
Right.
1988,
So
1988.
crack was just kind of hitting around that time, 85,
Yeah,
around
well, yeah,
85.
it was hit, but it didn't hit. It hadn't hit this where I was from at that time. In the city of New Orleans, um, it's heroin. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, hold on for a second. Hold on
Okay,
for a
no,
second.
no problem. Man, you guys are hearing some very listen. This is some serious content, you guys. I want you guys to interact with us. I want you guys to ask questions because like there's not too many times you get to hear a person that went into jail at 18 years old, went into the hole, was there for like what 5 months or 26 months. No, he said 26 months. That's
Yeah,
almost 2 years. Jesus Christ. Comes out, gets taught by a Black Panther, and they're trying to control the narrative of what's going on in the streets because he's getting the word back about what's happening in the streets because the crack epidemic is starting. Now, this person does not know what that CIA is involved, anything. He's just thinking that the gangs are like doing this and they're acting like this. He's not understanding that there's a whole product on the market that's making them behave this way, right? So he gets you to say, okay, rather than doing this, you need to be doing that. They're just being penny ante drug dealers. But then he's not even understanding that it's being millions of dollars being made in this thing, right?
Yeah, he well, I I think he did understand that he did understand the profit. He did understand COINTELPRO because that was one of the first things that I learned. You know, as a teenager, I learned COINTELPRO. We had we had study groups that broke down, and we broke it down um, about how it's done. We had study groups that dealt with how to destroy an organization. Based on um, uh, having agent traits. You can have agent traits by being a person that when you come into the study group or when you come into the group by always saying, bucking everything that the leader is saying or trying to turn everybody against the leader, like divide and conquer. Sometimes you could be an agent and not be an agent. You know, um, you're just a troublemaker. You're just an instigator. And you destroy the organization. So we had study groups, man, that talked about that type of stuff. I think more so he was
Hold on,
basically
and hold on. Wait, the jail would allow you guys to have. So you're in prison.
no, what they didn't allow. You would end up in the hole if you caught. What we did was they would have people that had classrooms as though they're tutoring you, and you had certain people who was often to black nationalism, Pan Africanism, or whatever, who would come in the classroom, and so they would act as though they were tutoring, but in fact they were. It was kind of like back during slavery. You know how they act like they having Sunday school out in the woods, and then they trying to figure out how to escape. Kind of like that.
Wow. So you went through basically training from a Black Panther. I mean, you're really getting like you're getting like what most people would wish for, like especially like people out here. You're
Well,
getting
well, yes and no. I mean, yes and no. I think we're going to talk about that later on, but we're going to talk about people who who try to, they think it's a fad, they think it's a trend, So yeah. These are some of the people you got to realize that J. Edgar Hoover, um, when they tried to put their foot on the Panthers' neck, it was the late '60s and the early '70s. So these brothers, some of these, and it wasn't that many. You might have had 10 out of shit 5,000 inmates. You know what I'm saying? Just like it is today. This most
so
people are not
was
most
the Nation of Islam really prevalent in that jail too, like or prison? Sorry, not
No,
jail.
they didn't have the Nation of Islam, but they did have the Sunni Muslims. They did have the Sunni Muslims, but at the same time, everybody was controlled. If you are on the compound, you are controlled. If you're on the compound, you are controlled. So you're gonna do what Master say do, or you're gonna end up back there with a shit throwing and the darts and talking to yourself and all that type of stuff.
Have you heard of like the Melanics? You ever heard of these people called the Melanics? And they I had a friend of mine. He was arrested for robbery, but he might have been there a little bit before you were. But he was about the same age. I think everybody kind of like at that, like in the 80, about around about 85,
Mm-hmm.
went to jail for some stuff, right? Like these
Mm-hmm.
young guys, right? And he was telling me, but there's a group called the Melanics, and then they would like extort you. Like if they found out that you were doing something about like with drugs or whatever, that they would extort you for your money, and then like almost like make your family have to keep sending them money and all this stuff like this.
Nah, they wasn't doing that back then that I knew of.
Okay, so I don't want to get too, but I just wonder if you like knew about those. So all right, so let's go forward. So you get out of jail, or is there anything else you want to cover about when you were in jail and you were getting trained by this
Yeah.
older guy?
Well, so basically, when he told me, when I got ready to get out, Um, I went home and um, I got a job working at a car dealership. At the age of 23, I got a car working at a car dealership. But I knew guys who were hustling. I knew guys who were in gangs, and it was really, really bad. People were dying. Um, and I did go to some guys. I'll never forget one time. These three guys, they were well known in the area where I'm from, and they were plotting to do a kick door. They was gonna kick door, do some kidnapping or whatever to rob some drug dealers. And and I went in there and I told them I overheard the conversation. I was like, "Look, man, you ain't got to do that. You know what I'm saying? What about this?" And I was like, "What about?" And I told him, I was like, "Man, listen, those guys that y'all initiating, why don't y'all have them to go in the bank? If they go in the bank, I give you everything. We could train them or whatever. They go in the bank, they get the money, then they're in the game. If they get caught, they don't tell, then they're in the game. That would be a good initiation. That's what I'm thinking. My logic was like it was kind of twisted. You got to realize I was young or whatever, but I thought I had a good idea. Besides, you know, kicking a door down and kidnapping somebody's child, or their girlfriend, holding them with a gun in their mouth and making them tell where the money is at in the safe and all that type of stuff.
And that's
And
really against your own brother, right?
and
You're doing this against your own brother. Why would you
yeah,
do
well,
that?
you're doing it against, you're doing it against it's they don't they don't know that's their brother. I mean, they're all about money. You got to think about the early '90s, the late '80s. You got crews or whatever. But my point is, and they looked at me. I never forget this. They looked at me like, hold on for a minute, hold on.
Man, this is a very interesting story. Listen, if you like the content, please put a one in the chat. Also, any questions you guys might have. This you don't really get to talk to a person that have been through this before. And that's why I wanted to bring this to the channel because I mean, you don't get to actually hear about a person who has direct contact with with a person from the Panthers and this, that, the other, and been in prison with them and actually with the inside understanding about the prison and what's going on there. And also as women, we might you might be dating a person that been in a hole, and you get to bucking up in him, and he might be kind of crazy. You know what I'm saying? Because he done been in a hole, he done been, traumatized. So yeah. Okay, go ahead. Hello.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. So where were we? Hello, can you hear me?
You said you were talking about the guys and about how they should do this at this, that, the other, and you were
Yeah, and they looked at me and they said, "Bruh, them white folks gonna put you up under the jail." Can you imagine that? Now they're plotting to kidnap a child, kidnap a girlfriend. Um,
anything could go wrong, right?
they're plotting to do this, but I'm telling them about a bank, and they're saying the white man is gonna put me up under the jail. This is what I'm talking about being controlled.
Right. So they would rather bust into a drug dealer's house and their kids and family might just happen to be there and they're willing to kill their own, well, not even their own, just kill the family, whatever. And so actually do murder, which is going to be underneath the jail anyway.
They was doing that they was doing it all over the United States. Philadelphia, New York, Chicago, Detroit. This is what they were doing in the early '90s. I mean, if you name some of your most notorious crews across the country. It was no brother thing. It was, yeah, they were ruthless.
Trust me, I know a person that used to do that. That's why I like learn the story about the Melanics. So
Yeah.
he used to bust in there and do this, that, the other, and yeah. And what happened is that he had a friend of his that kind of like was trigger happy and ended up shooting somebody, and then next thing you know, like this, that, the other happened. You know what I'm saying? So
Hmm. So yeah, they were control. And when I saw that, I was like, "Oh, you niggas really, y'all. I may be fucked up, but you niggas really fucked up. You gonna do that over going to the bank? It's like, imagine this. Imagine us being these ferocious dogs in the backyard, and our master is coming out with the food, and they put it in a bowl, and we're like, we going to war with each other for the food that's been put in the bowl. Well, I'm saying, I'm that dog that was saying, hey, the food is coming out the house.
right,
You know what I'm saying? Like, the food is coming out the
and they
house.
was like, "You crazy as hell for that."
And they was like, man, you crazy. They was like, man, a wife was gonna put you on it. What's wrong with you? And I remember it because they all are dead. And rest in peace to them. They're dead. I end up going to prison. I end up going to federal prison because I actually became a bank robber. I actually, that was my profession. I traveled all over the United States robbing banks.
So you did it more than one time. Wow.
Oh no, yeah, I did it. Yeah, several times, several times. It was a way of life. I was really good at it, actually. Really
Listen,
good.
this is the stuff that you only see in movies. You know what I'm saying? So you was a real like what they show in the movies and this, that, the other. You were really doing it.
See, the thing about me is that, um, although it was, looking at back at it, it was the most dumbest thing ever. Um, very irrational when it comes to thinking. But after I got my feet wet, it was like I had no fear. You know what I'm saying? And I lived a high. My way of life was very expensive because I wasn't working for the money, so it was nothing for me to blow 200,000, 100,000 in a week. Well, not really a week, but say, I shouldn't be able to blow that amount of money in 90 days, sometimes 90 days, 6 months. Didn't have enough sense to start a business because I was young. Didn't have enough, I wasn't around those type of people to even assist me in starting a business. So all I did was travel. All my friends were in prison because they were in gangs and they were killing people and doing the regular stuff to each other. I decided that I would move to Atlanta. I moved to Atlanta. I got married, but I still was robbing banks while I was living in Atlanta. So you
Did
know,
you know that you were robbing banks, or was it like a secret like lifestyle that you were just doing, and she just didn't even?
who? My wife?
Yeah.
Well, it came a time where she realized what was going on. Nobody else knew. The people in the town that I lived in thought I was a drug dealer because I had all the nice cars. I would uh, come back in town with convertibles, this and that and this and that, or you know um, I was paying $3,000 for a shirt, trying to was Versace and just all type of crazy shit, just blowing my money. Not to mention, strip clubs. Like I said, I lived in Atlanta. This is during the time of Jack the Rapper. This is during the beginning times of Freaknik. Not it was just like you're talking 93, 94. You know what I'm saying? So had a Jaguar. I mean, I would go and just buy cars. Didn't have no sense of a value of money.
So
Yeah,
you pretty much like probably how much money would you say you blew through during that time frame?
I blew through probably about $500,000.
So all right, so you're saying you were robbing banks and everything. Were you doing it on your own or did you have people with you?
I eventually, okay. In the beginning, I had two other young guys who I was able um, to convince to drive for me or something like that, and um, then they decided that they knew what they was doing, and they went off on their own and did some shit, and they ended up getting caught. you know. So I had then when they did get caught, they tried to debrief on me and tell the people like, hey, well, he's the person that told us about this shit. He's not the person that actually robbed the bank, but he did tell us about it. So they put me in on their little conspiracy. And I went to a trial. It was like a 19 count conspiracy. I went through trial in Dallas back in 95 during the time of the not the World Trade Center, but the Oklahoma bombing. I'll never forget it because they wanted to stop them from picking the jurors. And um, yeah, went to trial and actually beat it.
Probably
And
because
you don't
you shoot.
you don't beat federal, especially a bank robbery. But the thing was, they robbed a credit union and they actually told the people that I was with them. So the people think, okay, yeah, we got it. So they told the people that I was with them to make it more juicier to try to help themselves. And then when they did bring me in and try me, uh, it was the particular day that they robbed the bank. I was going to a, a, like a, where you used to go and what was the place? Remember you used to go to the places and you used to send money back and forth. Like you could go and cash checks and stuff like that.
A check cashing place?
Check cash in place, but you could also send money. You could send money across country. So I was actually picking up some money uh, uh, at the time that they actually robbed this credit union. So they don't know this. They don't know that I'm in Norcross, Georgia, picking up some money. They robbing a bank down in Mesquite, some damn where in Dallas, and they told the people that yeah he came in there with us. And so when I went to trial, it came out that no, he couldn't have been in two places at one time. So all the other information that y'all gave them, my lawyer was able to show it. If you believe this when they were lying, then you can't believe nothing else they said, right? Well, I was fortunate enough to actually beat the feds. 1995. What district would that be? I don't know what district it, but it was in Dallas, Texas.
Dallas, that's like the scary, right? That's the 30,
Huh?
I think that's like the 36th district court or whatever, something like
Yeah, it's
that.
a federal, but it was federal. It was federal. So, but anyway, so I beat it. So you would have thought that I would have stopped robbing banks. You would have thought that I would have stopped robbing banks, but I was good. I was real good. I wasn't getting caught. They just picked up on, a little information. It was like, we don't need this nigga now. We can do this shit ourselves. We ain't got to break it in three ways. So let's just go on and do our own shit. Well, okay, so they end up going to prison. The one guy ended up telling on all of us. He ended up getting maybe 8 years, 5 years. The other guy, the youngest guy, he ended up getting 30 years. Okay, so I ended up beating it. I ended up coming home, still robbing banks, not really understanding, what's really going on in my head. I'm like, man, why are you still robbing these damn people banks? And I still was doing it. I still was going state to state. And it wasn't until um, 96 that I went in the wrong damn credit union. And that was the end of my bank robbery sprees. And I ended up going to federal I end up going to maximum security USP Atlanta. Um, well, time I get there, I run into Matula Shakur, who
Wait, wait,
became my
wait,
mentor.
wait, wait. So what made you get caught this last time?
Mm. Not get off into details. So I used to always rob banks when it's raining, or it just started raining, because I knew that the police wouldn't be able to respond that fast. So I'm in Dallas, and I wasn't, it wasn't, so I was in Dallas, and it was pouring down raining. So I said, yeah, it's time. That's my sign that, it's meant for me to do it. So I'm going down, I don't know what interstate that I was going to, but I end up at this credit union. And when I went in as planned and got all the money, and I was coming out the door, it stopped raining. It was just sun. The sun was just shining when I came out, and I was like, oh shit. And by the time I made my little route, jumped in the truck, but I got about 5 blocks and I seen a ghetto bird. See, if it would have been raining, the ghetto bird wouldn't have been able to get there in time. But on this particular day, it was meant for me for this madness to stop.
Wow, that's
Yeah, it was in, and then I end
right.
up.
She said, "Damn, you work with the weather."
Yeah, well, I've always been a spiritual person. I'm a spiritual man, and I just always felt like, okay, I'm looking for signs. Like if I would look for any little different, any little thing that was out of place, I would turn around, because I didn't. And that's the crazy thing. I didn't have to do it. Like I wasn't, you know,
You had
I wasn't.
money, right? You had already saved up.
Yeah, I had money. I had brand new vehicles. I had jewelry. I was living, I could tell you stories of, I don't want to name famous people because somebody might see this, send this to somebody. But man, I was amongst some of the most famous people, going to these parties. Um, man, like I said, I don't want to name anybody, but from the West Coast to the East Coast. You know what I'm saying? And that's one of the reasons how we're gonna get to that. But that's one of the reasons how I end up getting introduced to the lifestyle. But we'll talk about that further up in the story. But um, I didn't need to do it. I did not need to do it. I would, when you rob a bank, you can live off that money for 2 to 3 years. I just
It became an addiction for you.
it was addiction. I mean, I was good.
They
I
say
was
the same thing about like dealing drugs is that once you like get into that like lifestyle, you get like addicted to like the money of it all.
Yeah, and you got to realize too now, we passed the point to um I didn't believe in uh nobody pimping me. You know what I'm saying? And there was a lot of situations in which when I first did a bank, I robbed a bank for $80,000 and I got 5,000, and the money was supposed to be going. It was supposed to be going to the movement. I don't know where it went. I just know I got $8,000. But at the end of the day, I was like, you know what? You know, it's a lot of pimping going on. You know what I'm saying? I mean, from being in the nation, I used to be in the Nation of Islam, and I forgot to tell you about that. So I was selling papers, and I used to get a dime on every dollar. You know, and the brothers like that was on post were like, you know, I'm like, man, I just got out of jail. I need a job. I need a real job. Like I'm making a dime on a dollar. Those brothers that work out on the corner with the bow ties, them brothers be hustling. They gotta sell papers to see some money. The majority of that money is going to the headquarters. It's going to Chicago.
Right, so that they have to respect that these people are honest enough to like send that money over there, or it's like what?
What's the question?
So they were so these guys have so much respect that they're not gonna slight the nation. Like they say, okay, well,
Yeah, they because they got so many papers. It's like when you was a kid, you sold the cookies and the candy bars. So you got so many papers and you got so much money. Okay, if I give you 48 papers, then you should come back with. You understand what I'm saying? So, but anyway, yeah, I was doing that, and I was like, really, and I was like, bam, and and when the brother's situation happened, I got $5,000 out of $80,000, and I was like, nah, I might as well sell papers. Like it's a lot of pimping going on. I mean, you know,
so basically, so you got caught, right? So what happened after you got caught? Did you go straight to?
I go to federal prison. I go to federal prison. I go to USP Atlanta. Um, I was in USP Atlanta up there with uh, Akbar Prey, Matula Shakur, um, some of the big Nikki, not Nikki Bourne, but Nikki Scarfo, I think is his name. Just a whole bunch of just a whole bunch of gangsters from New York to from Brooklyn to Queens to you name it. But you got to realize I go in with the mindset of a cub. I was in Angola. Remember, my mentor was a Panther. So when I go back into prison, it's back into that mode. I'm getting right back into uniform.
How old were you then when you got arrested for robbing all the banks?
26, 26, 27,
So from 18 to
23,
you got that charge, and then from
and then
free, and then you went
from
right.
26 to from 26 to 41.
Okay, so now you're back into federal prison, and what I'm seeing here is that, like, so it's almost like the prison. They always say that you learn how to be a better whatever it is in prison because you're around other people that are doing XYZ, and they teach you how to be better at it. Is that
Yeah,
true?
well, if you're a person that master the craft, then yes. Not everybody master the craft. I mean, um, but if you're a person that master the craft, you're gonna figure out ways to beat the system.
So how was federal prison? How did that go? So
Well,
you're in federal prison with some of the biggest people known to man, and you're going in there for what you did. So I mean,
yeah, federal prison for me was a learning experience. I did the same thing I did in Angola. I used it as I not everybody do what I did, but what I did was I studied under every religion. I studied I studied under the Muslims, the nation, the Sunnis, the Moors, the Rastas, um, Scientology, even the Native Americans. Um, I did it, and people were like, "Man, you don't know what you want to do. You confused. You confused." They would say, "I'm confused." I knew I wasn't confused. I just was using the time, to make my time go by. But I was in my mind. I'm in college, so each place that I went in with whatever book that I went in, I was studying it. You know what I'm saying? And then it got to the point to where it's okay. Certain ones was you couldn't do that. So I had to kind of like bag up. Like they were like, "Ah, brother, we want you to in the ranks." I'm like, nah, I'm good. I'm good. I'm you know, I don't want to do that. But I did so. But what I did was I studied under Matula Shakur. He taught me more. Once him and the guy Maisi, who I told you Wale Mu, which means teacher, him and they were friends. They were part of the New Republic of Africa. Only people that knows this language, the words that I'm using, they kind of gonna know what I'm talking about. But they were
but,
part of
but
the
here's the
New
question. Wait. Before we get into that, how long were you sentenced for this for robbing the bank?
Fifth. Well, I was sentenced to 121 months, and then I got re-indicted, and I got re-indicted, and then I got um, sentenced to 90 months on top of the 121 months,
How many years is that?
15 years. I mean, with the good time and all, it's like 15 years. The 121 months was 10 years. Um, um, this, it was like 90 months added on to that, something like that.
So how was that being in federal prison? You got into it with you began to like make alliances and allegiances. Was this like the thing when you went in this time? Was that the thing that like that changed your life, or were you taught more how to be a better person?
Yeah, I was taught more. I was taught more how to be a criminal because then I started getting off into extortion. So I started extorting child molesters, what they call chomos. I started extorting child molesters. Um, I was getting a lot of money in prison doing that, selling drugs in prison. Um, well, not really selling drugs because I smoke weed, so I mostly bought drugs or whatever. I bought weed whenever we could find it or wherever could get it. But yeah, it wasn't until um, after 10 years, my mother came to visit me. My mom came to visit me one time. She flew to visit me and she said, if you could do it all over again, would you do it? I think it was about 5 years. And I was like, hell yeah. Because the shit that I did, I never would have been able to do. Shit I experienced, I mean, the people that I was around, I mean, all of this fake shit that I didn't realize was fake. Um, and I was like, hell yeah, I would have did it. I still had pictures, so I had my photo album. So when I go off into, in prison, if you got your photo album, you're not just talking, you know what I'm saying? So I'm showing pictures with, Left Eye and all these different people, Andre Rison, and we up in Atlanta, and I'm in with all these different people, all these different people hanging out at different people's mansions in Houston and Sugarland and all these different places. But so I said, hell no. I said, hell yeah. No, I don't regret it. Yeah, I'd do it again. That was 5 years. After 10 years, she asked me the same question. And when she asked me the same question, um, I told her no. Because now I'm starting to see people die in prison. When I said die, I mean getting killed. The federal maximum security is around the United States is one of the most vicious prison systems.
Worse than what you went through in the hole.
They were worse from the standpoint of politics and just being stabbed, not from a psychological standpoint. Because see, if those people would have been in federal prison, they would have been in some type of psychiatric. They would have been in a ward or something. They would have been at a hospital. Like Camp J was, these people should have been in a hospital.
So, so what kind of like psychological games do they play in the federal prison that didn't happen in the other prisons? What do you think? What really worked on your psyche there?
Well, the politics. Politics could be, I could be the leader today, and then tomorrow, the people that I lead and look up to me, they could just turn on me and just smash me. And then now I'm looked at as a victim. Um, the riots, being in the riots, if you say like I'm gonna get a visit, like I was doing the pen pal thing, so I'm always trying to find me a woman or something to come visit me or whatever. So I got a visit coming, and next thing you know, it's a riot. You know what I'm saying? So we're gonna be locked down. It's just you gotta have then you got the racial tension. And you talk about racial tension. The white gangs are more vicious and more dangerous than any black gang in this country. They're malicious. They study. They know pressure points. They know what to do. So most black people are not trying to go to war with the white boys. They're not.
Really? So those
Yeah.
gangs are worse than any other gang in prison, but you only hear about like the Bloods and the Crips and the
Nah. The blood. It's so bad to where the blacks have to stick together when there's a racial war. They have to stick together. They're gonna have more numbers, but they're not gonna kill you because in prison everybody want to come home. Sorry about that. Somebody just called me. You still there?
Yeah, we're still here.
Okay. So, um, the white boys are trained to kill. We just want to fight. You know, we want to jump somebody. We might stab somebody, but for the most part, the white boy is gonna kill you. He's gonna kill you.
So you have a question. Did any of the prison guards do anything like to like hide the crime and like kill people and things like that and then hid the crimes?
No. In federal prison, most of the prison guards, um, now out west in California, when I was in California, you had Mexicans who had Serrano or Mexican mafia tattoos. So you know that they were connected. So now we understand why the Mexicans had real life the knives that you buy from the store. They had these knives. Because the guards would bring it to them. We would have to make a shank. We would have to make something. You know what I'm saying? But they had real life. They had real life butcher knives. California is way different. The politics is way stronger and thicker. Uh, the politics is.
Put your phone on do not disturb so it doesn't do that. So just put your phone on do not disturb real quick.
I don't even know how to. Yeah, I don't know how to do it on this. I have a new iPhone 14. I just got it yesterday, so I don't know how to do it.
So were you still married at the second time of your imprisonment?
I was married. I thought I was married, but I thought I was married, but no, yeah, I was married.
Okay, so so you spend so was this the turning point in your life when you know went in there for 15 years and you got to like see how things were going, you're doing whatever, and then you like end up leaving from there and like living your life, or did you go back again, or was that
No, I know I never went back. The turning point was building up as I was seeing the things that was around me, like fake shit. Shit that just like for instance, the worst thing that you could be in a maximum security prison is a rat. Well, if you had money, then the strong crews would protect you. So how is the worst thing you could be is a rat? If you was a child molester, if you fucked a child and you had money, then
you could buy protection
you
from?
could buy protection. So, but how is that? You know, every it's not the worst thing then. Then you would see guys who were like well-known gangsters, like well-known gangsters, been down 20 years, and then all of a sudden you go to their cell and they're not there. They done went back to court and they're talking about old murders that happened back in 1978 or 1984. Like it taught me that everybody have a breaking point. Like what I'm saying, a lot of people will
You would
be.
see people break down like what they think they're about to get out.
No, I mean you know about what's his name out of DC? Um um what's his name?
The Muslim guy that was shooting everybody.
No, the dude who was the big dude who was doing the time at Alpo, man. I mean, Edmund. I can't think his name, but what I'm saying is you will be around these thorough dudes, and then who knows what man is gonna do? Like who knows what man is gonna do? You don't know what a man's gonna do when he wake up and how he's feeling this day. You know what I'm saying? So I started seeing that shit, and I was like, man, this shit's crazy. Another thing, it's just contradictions. If we are around all these notorious people, and then I promise God, Genesis, I promise you, a woman that may look just like you would say, "Y'all go to bed." Shut up. I mean it. I'm some I could name some of them. I could name some. I just don't like name dropping, but people who from the Bronx, from Harlem, from Chicago. I mean, board members. When I said board members, the people right up under Larry Hoover. Somebody like you or my mom is telling them what to do. When I say telling them what to do, disrespectfully. And you look at that shit, and you be like, okay, like, why we just can't unite and take over the prison? I mean, we don't have to do 5 or 6 life sentences. I only have 15 years, but I'm still looking at this shit like, man, what? You know what I'm saying?
And didn't it like kind of like pigeonhole you and begin to like bring you out amongst all the prisoners that were there? Didn't it like kind of like focus on you at some point, like because what you did was really like more extreme than what the other ones did?
Okay, so there was a situation where I was at this one prison, and they kept sending me to the psych. They kept sending me to the psych, and I wanted to go too because there was some interns, and I liked the intern, so I would go. So then when I would go to the she I asked her. I said, why? No, she asked me. She said, why they got you on here? You crazy or something? Why they got you on this list? I said, I don't know. And she said, well, I'm gonna find out next week. I'm gonna find out. Next week, she put me back on there and she said, it's because you're a bank robber. They want to know why you was robbing them white folks' banks. So I was like, well, all these dudes down there that was part of uh, these different crime crews all over the United States, who you see like on American Gangster, they not on there. The guys that were selling crack, they not on there.
But because the nature of what you
But because of the nature of my crime, they wanted to know why would a black man? See, because she said it. She said black men are not. This a low percent that robs banks. Bank robbery is mostly white guys rob banks. Mostly white guys rob banks.
so
You can
do
do
you
the
think that by putting the reason why they put you in the well, no, because the hole was the murder charge, not the bank. So have you ever been in the hole because of the bank
I've,
robbery?
I've, I've been in the hole several times, been in different prisons, uh, been in different prison riots and stuff. Been in the hole several times, but not that long. And then the hole in the Fed is totally different than the conditions in the state. But yeah. So they were trying to figure out, like, when you have people who I told her the same thing I kind of told you. I'm like, wait a minute, if everybody's out to get money. Mind you, this shit is crazy to think like this, the way I was thinking, because I don't think like that now. But I'm just like, if everybody's out to get money, you talking about the early 90s. You remember everybody was out to get money? Remember Get Rich or Die Trying?
Yeah,
Okay,
F
so
bitches get money. So this you
yeah,
had that was your soundtrack in that time. Like
yeah.
F
So
bitches
if
get
that's the
money.
case,
And you just with
if
the
that's the case, why if you want to get money, then why not go to the bank? I know it
now
sounds
now
crazy.
we know why not to go to the bank because that was a whole like 15-year sentence that you had to do.
But compared to, think about it, compared to the majority that stood on the corner and got in these trap houses and destroyed the community. Think about that. You're looking at it from a different lens.
Well, no,
Think about it.
I get what you're saying. I'm just saying
Think
like
about it. So every major city, crack came out. They was selling this crack, and oh, why y'all sell crack? Oh man, because I want to be able to afford a car. I got this Mercedes Benz. The LG kit. I got that. Blah blah. When you see all these documentaries and all this type of stuff, yeah, they got the fur on and blah blah blah. Think about it. All over America, you would rather sell this product than have the mindset was like, well, damn, all the money is in the bank.
Well, it's not anymore because they done figured out. Yeah, it's a whole new thing right now. You can't go to the bank and rob and get nothing. So
You know what I'm
I don't,
saying?
I
Like,
don't think the banks even hold more than like $2,000 a piece. You know what I'm saying?
nah, no, that's not true. I mean, if that's the case, how are you able to people to go to the same bank and cash that check? That's crazy. Listen, what I'm saying is that um, why not study people who kill for colors? Why not study, the people who have multiple charges of selling drugs? Why, why?
They want to study you because they're like, we want to make sure this don't happen again. Like,
Yeah, well, because at the end of the day, it means that you're not scared of the white man. I mean, not the white man. I ain't mean to say the white man, but it means that you can go from 0 to 100, and not being afraid. You can be dangerous when you're not afraid. You know what I'm
and
saying?
that's where it gets into mental health, right? So
Yeah, yeah. You can be dangerous. In which they think this when you're not afraid, okay? But you take these other guys, they're not afraid of nobody black. They're not afraid to sell crack. But like the guy said, if you go in the bank, they're gonna put you under the jail. They're gonna, yeah, yeah, master gonna let us sell dope, but you can't do that. Think about that. You can't do that. There's just some things that um yeah, you know how you see things dealing with the police, and you wonder why. Okay, damn, all this is you wonder where are all the so-called this and that. They're afraid.
so what happened when you got out? So you did your time. Was there anything that happened that you would say
So
was
so what one of the things that changed my life is once I started studying things dealing with mental health. So I started learning about accountability. I started learning about, irrational behavior, irrational thoughts, challenging those thoughts. I started just reading these different self-help books. You know what I'm saying? And
did they like do that for you, or did you just do it on your own?
I did it on my own. I did it on my own. They had programs, and I exercised the programs that I was in to the utmost to learn and get down to the root of why this happened, so why this happened and why that happened. As a chess player, I want to master the craft of learning human behavior. And it helped me so much when I came home from prison. It helped me so much when I came home from prison. So those days of putting my life on the line to go to prison is definitely over. You know, um, uh, I remember a conversation I had with Dr. Matula Shakur, and when I was getting ready to come home, and he was telling me, yeah, when you get out, you better not go out there, and you better not be getting in those groups. Don't make yourself a target. And when I came home from prison, that's the first thing I seen about everybody. I guess with social media, with the new organizations that were sprouting up, uh, everybody wanted to get on the bullhorn and say, "Hey, I'm this person, and we're gonna do this to you. We're gonna shut you down." You know what I'm saying? Making themselves a target, and everybody that's made themselves a target. Um, Everybody's made themselves a target. Has these people know how to deal with them? So you can't fight. Those people can't fight. Uh, they can't fight anything that they can't see. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
They can't fight. If you have a vanguard, or you have a cadre, or you have a study group, you, you know, um, the FBI won't start targeting you. Pulling you over if they don't know that this is what you do. You understand what I'm saying? Why do we want them to know that this is what we do? You know what I'm saying? So we can get pulled over. They
And you
can rape.
right, and see, and that's the thing is that like I know that at one point you had the RBG movement, you had all these different movements and stuff like that going on, and there were two out front, and then you end up with like people like getting like what's it called, the terrorist act or whatever on them, like the Black Terrorist Act and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, we give them too much. When then social media, like I said, you got to realize, man. I think ego drives this. You know, the ego drives it. It drives it from the men and the women. You know, you have the women who, you know, they see a picture of Angela Davis, you know, or Sata Shakur, and they're just like, oh, that's what I want to do. You know what I'm saying?
No, they don't
And
even gotta see a picture of that. They just see a picture of another girl with her booty out, and then they end up like getting a BBL.
well, yeah, but I'm saying
It's
from a
kind, it's monkey see, monkey do on the internet. Everybody,
yeah, wait, but when you could be a target, you can't be a target for getting a BBL. I mean, you know what I'm saying? You get a
yeah, you
target.
can. You sure as hell can.
You're not, the FBI is not going to be after you to try to kill you because, think about this other brother by the name of Master J. A good example. What if Master J did what he was trying to do clandestine, real discreet? Think about it. Think about if this guy,
You know,
instead of,
Jam Master Jay when he got killed.
you know who I'm talking about? No, okay. You don't know who I'm talking about.
No, I don't
I'm
know
talking
who.
about the the NFC guy.
No, I don't know who.
The NFC guy. He was the guy who they was dressed in all black and they were marching. They had all rifles. They had a lot of your militia groups, black militia groups, was meeting up to Stone Mountain, and they were doing all this stuff. If you make yourself a target, then
Oh yeah, during the whole thing when they was actually protesting, and so he was like,
yeah.
and they dismantled that so quick. It was like, yeah, it was crazy.
And they was look what they was able to get the head. They was able to get the head, and guess what? Now everybody going back to whatever the fuck they was doing before. You know what I'm saying? Same thing, same situation. With the brother in with the situation that happened in Dallas. Same situation. You know what I'm saying? Um, so
So when we get back into mental health, though, so all this stuff, like really, what this conversation was really about, and what it's really about is like mental health, right? So all these things, right, affect our community in an adverse way, right? Because these
okay,
people get out at some point, right? They have
oh,
to
oh,
get out.
okay.
They have to like be in society, and so
hmm
what do you feel the
Okay,
impact of
so
society?
think about this. Like we were talking about mental health earlier today, and I was telling you, I was like, why do people forgot that there was a crack epidemic? There was a crack epidemic that went through this country that tore communities up. They even tore infrastructures up. You from Detroit, I know you know. You understand what I'm saying? I
Yeah,
mean, all over. So if there was
I remember when there used to be winos on the corner. There's no more winos no more. They're crackheads. Remember there used to
so
be
so
winos?
so so if you have crackheads and it was a pandemic of addicts, what do you think happened to those people? What do you think happened to the women? Some of these women had babies, right? You remember? You remember they talked about crack babies?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so what do you think happened to them? Some of these people have, they have mental dysfunctions. Okay, even during the crack era, when you had the gang epidemic, when there was a real serious epidemic, what do you think happens to a person who kidnaps somebody, takes the body and put it in the trunk, and then take it out in the woods and bury it or burn up a whole family
Right, and don't get caught though.
and
You
don't get caught? And don't get caught,
and
let
that was
alone
a lot of the women were doing that. They were like actually setting people up and doing all type of
yeah,
crazy
yeah.
stuff.
Okay. Talk about
Backbone.
that. Let's talk about that. The women, some of your pretty women, some of your mothers, they're mothers and grandmothers now, and they living with. Oh, I met this guy. I was going with this dope dealer, and he wanted me to set this other guy up at the hotel, and all my job was to go to the hotel and leave the door open. And once they came in, I left. They gave me $10,000, and they killed him. cut his dick off and put it in his mouth. What do you think? We just forget like what happened yesterday. What and then think about the prisoners. Okay, let's even let me bring it more. I don't want to talk about so much prison. Let's talk about the women who've been molested. They've been molested. They were molested by an uncle or a grandfather every Thanksgiving, Christmas, when the family's in the front room playing dominoes, and then the drunk uncle go in the back room and he molests the 6-year-old girl, and he's been doing it for 6, 7 years.
Right.
And we wonder why, somebody, you know, uh, uh, have these outbursts, like some of the people that we know. You say, oh, she's crazy. Yeah, she might be crazy, but there's a reason. There's something behind it.
And I hate to bring her name up, but I'm gonna say this is that I've heard stories even from Jaguar, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I hear about the stories that have come up in her life, right, I think about these things, when she talks about when she was younger and being, I'm not sure how much of these stories are true, right? But she talks about stories where she was there when somebody did this and did that. Now, I'm not sure, but it's the bottom line is that this is during that time frame. And so I don't think it's far fetched to think she might have been
There are there are so many women that live a regular life, doctors, lawyers, that was molested and raped. You know how many women that was raped in college? You know how many AKAs and Deltas been raped that don't talk about it? How many accused and raped? Not just accused, but
a part of the initiation ritual.
well, I don't know any thing about that. I'm talking about rape. I ain't talking about the initiation ritual, because I'm talking about, and then if that's the case, then they were willing participants to be a part of something. I'm talking about the girl who liked the guy, right? She came over to the guy's apartment. This happened everywhere. Howard, Morehouse, Clark. She liked the guy. She went to his apartment. She had sex with him, and 3 guys come out the closet. She
Yeah, that
didn't.
was that was that was happening. I remember like stories like that.
Listen, we are people that we forget so fast. We get on the blue app, and you hear them judging other people, and you be like, wow, that happened to you. I know that happened to you. Like, it's so much dealing with mental health.
I've actually had that happen to me before. I've actually
Listen,
been with a guy, and then all of a sudden, I guess they thought I was drunk, and then next thing you know, like I'm with this guy, and all of a sudden I feel like extra hands touching my legs. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And I see like,
but some people that traumatizes some people, and they take it the rest of when they in relationships, it play a part in the relationship. See, this is like regular life. I'm not talking prison, where niggas coming home from prison and a motherfucker threw shit in their face. I've seen several officers quit their job because somebody threw shit in their face, like from here to where I'm at, bam, and they just quit the job.
right, and
So
imagine,
imagine being a prisoner where you didn't got some shit thrown on you, some hot shit, or whatever. It's beyond being sexually abused. That's television. Nobody gets sexually abused in prison anymore. They got too many people that's just freaked out the game to where it's whatever. That doesn't happen.
hell, you don't have to sexually abuse them because they come in gay anyway. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, but when we talking about, you know, s- traumatized, do you know how many people out of the projects and seen a kid? Think about it. Maybe a 10-year-old kid that's seen somebody get smoked, get killed in the projects, or they come outside on a Saturday to play, and Friday night somebody got killed in the corridor, and then the kid coming out instead of going to watching cartoons, go out and see a dead body. Think about it. People just it's something about black people. It's certain shit it's certain shit we want to forget. We're good at that. We're really, really good at that. You know what I'm saying? We remember what we want to remember, but at the end of the day, what I'm saying is that people are traumatized. Most people have post-traumatic stress. If you would If you were a person who was doing drive-bys, most likely you got post-traumatic stress. Because if you could be in the military and you could do a drive-by in the military and be post-traumatic stress, then most likely in society it's the same way. But who cares? You know.
Right, and ain't no veterans benefits to like go to the psychiatrist about your drive by that you did when you were younger. You know,
Exactly. Exactly.
and these people are really living in society now. They're our elders now, right? They're Generation X.
They're my generation.
Yeah.
They're 50, you 40. Um, you and then you okay. Then I'm gonna bring it a little home, a close home. Um, then so think about this from a mental health standpoint. Do you know a guy told me the other day? He said, "Man, I don't even go out because the music they play make you want to fight." You notice they don't play love songs where everybody slow drag, slow dance.
Right. Back in the 70s, it used to be all slow
Well,
dance.
not just the 70s, in the 80s, during the time of, Prince and
At the end of the
R
party, they would like play like a
even yeah, even R. Kelly. I mean, they always played music where you could slow dance. That's how you interact with the opposite sex. You understand what I'm saying? That's how you can interact. You can meet somebody, hey,
you know
have a
how
good
they
day.
end the party now is before I let go. Not like play another slow jam.
No,
No,
none
they
of that.
before I let go. Now they didn't heard, Nuck if you buck and I'm old, so I'm good.
Yeah, yeah, but it's demon music. It's demon music. It's music that make you want to kill. Because that's all they talk about is slide, a slide, a step, a slide. It's crazy. So
And now they got it down to a science where they don't even have to say nothing, and it's just the actual tone of the actual like music. They don't even, like you got like a what's his name? What's it? I just want to rock. What's his name? Uzi Vert, right? But they call him like so little Uzi Vert. They say that really he's saying his name is Lucifer, like Uzi Vert, Uzi Vert, Lucifer.
yeah, well, the music it determines your vibration. You know what I'm saying? And they've got so good at this. It's not even television anymore. They don't you use television. They use the music. And the music can basically have you in a trance. If it could, if the drums talk, in Yoruba, in different parts and tribes in Africa, them drums they do things to your spirit. You know what I'm saying? I've heard them. I've been in you know to places and I've seen things and felt stuff. From hearing those drums. Those
Oh
drums
no,
actually.
trust me. Like I've been in ceremonies where they have that talking drum, and like that talking drum will have a possession
Yeah,
aspect.
exactly. So now they got this type of music. Uh, this stuff is documented, you know. Um, but like I said, then you have like I said, people coming home from prison, and you just expect okay, because you're out from prison, you just get a job, and you just go on with your life. But there's trauma that haven't been dealt with. There's mental health that haven't been dealt with.
And listen, I want to. The main thing my panel, I've always been about relationships because I've actually dated a guy from prison before, a few. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm. Hmm.
And they come out and they have like the they actually like have a good outlook on life, but the reality sets in. And then here's the thing is that you might get into an argument with a person, right? That, might be on the second strike, right?
Hmm.
And, you have, some places have the three strikes you're out rule, right? And it's a thing like, you know what? They might be like, bitch, if you don't, whatever, and then they get that third strike. Hey, it is what it is.
That's very true.
So you got to watch out when you're dating
That
guys.
is very true. That's very true because that's what they call a point of no return. But I mean,
I was actually dating a guy who
a
told
point
me,
of no return could be done with basically anybody. It could be somebody who's never been to prison, and there's an argument, and you about to get ready to call the police on them, and they panic. And when they panic, they're not responsible.
Right. And especially if you have trauma like that. Like I've been in a whole X amount of years and you hollering at me and you might trigger something. So that's what mental health, like we have to understand that, especially in the black community, when you have a very huge prison population that's like coming back into society, going back out, in and out. Cause it's and then you have like then you now you have like this red pill, blue pill thing, right? Where you
Hmm.
have women say, okay, men only are incapable of love, right? But you're also dealing with people that have been in the prison system that I mean, that's how I feel. Like you get like a lot of people that have been traumatized that way, right? They might have been in for 5 or 10 years. You don't know how much time they spent in the hole, and they're coming out, and you get into it with them, and they might just be ready to snap. You know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, I agree. But think about this. Let's take prison out the equation. If you meet somebody, I've met women who had daddy issues. That daddy left and never came back, and because of that, that triggers so much in how they see the man that they're dating. Like, you're gonna leave. You're never gonna. You're not gonna really love me. You understand what I'm saying? There are so many different things that trigger people. There's just so many different things that people have been traumatized about. Somebody died in the family, but some more serious is like rape, being molested. Um, a lot of women, unfortunately, a lot of black women have been molested or raped. You know what I'm saying? So. Um, you know, they kind of come in a relationship with a band-aid, right? And men, the same way, men have done fucked up shit as well, to where as they come in a relationship, you meet their representative. You meet the person that the good guy. You meet the yoga guy. You know what I'm saying? They're like, I like to read books. Like, yeah, we could go to Barnes and Noble, right? Right? So then, you know, you on the phone or you texting somebody and like, damn, who you texting? What the hell you doing? You know what I'm saying? Because they've been through abandonment issues.
Right, right.
You understand what I'm saying? So it works both ways, men and women. It is like, you know, who can really be loved at this point? You know what I'm saying? Um, we'll talk about that some other time. I love relationship. That's one of the things I studied while in prison. Uh, Black relationships and the dynamics of black relationships and being transparent. But yeah.
So when you got out of prison, you found solitude in the swingers movement. So what made you feel like that was like the best way to go versus like being
Okay, so when I came home, I met. I don't know if you remember her, but I met this Italian. Um, she was a fashion designer. You remember her? The fashion designer.
no, I
But
don't remember.
anyway. So she introduced me to. She was like, she was at my apartment or whatever, and
Oh yeah, I do remember her. I
yeah, with the
spoke to her.
mohawk. She had the
Yeah,
mohawk.
I
Yeah,
spoke to her. Yeah.
yeah. What basically she introduced me to the swinger lifestyle, the swinger culture, and one of the main things that caught me and that sold me was you ain't gotta lie. You ain't gotta you have to be transparent because when you're transparent, well, my phone's about to die. But when you're transparent, um, you're not being deceitful. It is what it is,
Plug it in. Plug it
and
in.
a person accepts you more when you're transparent and you tell what it is. And when I came home, and I have no space for jealousy because she's told me, hey, this guy right here, he wants to have sex with me, you know, um, is it okay? And in my mind, I'm looking at her like, well, because you asked me, that means that's something that you really want to do. So now I'm coming out of prison. I'm like, man, don't nobody want no damn warden over them. Don't nobody want no police state over them. Like, if she come and ask me and say, hey, he wants to do this, Is it okay with you? Because if it's something that you don't want to do, you wouldn't even have to come and ask me, right?
Right, correct.
Okay, so, and I'm like, okay, damn. All I have to say is, yeah. And then there's somebody with the same situation with me, I don't have to lie. So it kind of sold it, that whole culture sold me like, oh man, I'm gonna come home and I'm gonna be transparent. Yeah, I'm gonna be transparent.
So is that why you prefer that lifestyle over like just regular dating?
Yeah, because everybody's lying. Everybody else is lying. Um, everybody's lying. Everybody's lying. From the married man, you know, man, that's a whole nother can of worms. I mean,
But what about polygamy? What's the difference between like the swinger
well,
life?
I mean, polygamy is there's a need for polygamy. You know, there's a need for polygamy as well. I mean, but it's still it's about being transparent. You got to get past that first. You gotta get past. You know, everybody believe that. Oh, I'm enough for you. You don't need nobody. They tell you that you don't need nobody, and here you are saying, "Hey, baby, um, I think that we need to do this." Or she may say, "Hey, baby, I think we may need to do this." So you might be a person that got high blood pressure and your penis not working no more. You know what I'm saying? That happens. That happens, especially with black men. You know what I'm saying? They losing their sex drive the older they get. So this woman is being deprived. You know what I'm saying, of some good sex.
So
Okay, so she
is
needs
is
she
the
needs
swinger
she
thing
needs.
all about sex? Is the whole swingers
Well, no. Well, what you say? What's the question?
is the swingers movement all about just 100% sex, or is it just also relationships?
Um, no, I mean it's not 100% sex. I mean swinging is it's sex, but I mean you build there's relationships that you build, or whatever. It brings it for us being married or being in a relationship. It brings excitement to the relationship. It's not just it ain't just a threesome. Because sometimes with the threesomes that could go bad because if the man is not transparent, then now he might be having sex with the woman when you're not around. So that could destroy the relationship. You know what I'm saying? But if you're transparent, if you're best friends with your partner, um, and you're able to talk to your partner, because a relationship is based upon communication and honesty. I like to know what else is based upon communication and honesty.
So you
But
felt like coming out of prison that was the best option once you got introduced to that.
oh, it worked for me. It worked for me. I've tried monogamy relationships. I've tried it, but at the end, but at the end of the day, you can't be who you are. Who would you want to be with a man he's basically faking it? He's for whatever reason he's doing it, but he's basically in a relationship with you faking. Once he walk out that door, he's somebody totally different. He's not who he say he is.
So do you think that it's also a matter of the fact that you were in prison and being locked down so hard, like in prison, which makes you choose that lifestyle?
Well, I mean, as far as coming home at the beginning, you want to be honest. And it came a point in my life to where I want to change all of the bad things about myself. And I kind of vision myself like a car being put up on blocks, everything being stripped down and rebuilt. So when I came home and I met this woman, I never knew anything about that. I mean, I thought only white people did it. You know what I'm saying? When she introduced it to me, and I looked at it, and I was like, man, you ain't gotta lie, so I can have sex with you'll let me.
So
And
here's the
then
question: would you suggest that a person that's dating a person fresh out of prison that they should look into the swinger lifestyle before they try to be monogamous?
ask that question again.
Do you think a person that might be dating a person out of prison should look into the swinger lifestyle before they try to be monogamous? Because a person's coming out of jail, right, or prison, right, have been deprived for so long, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So the
A
best
person
thing
that comes
to
out
do
of a
is
person that comes out of prison um, has been deprived, and sometimes they may be the first girl, and they could fall in love with that girl, but they've been gone so long to where it's like, well, I never dated a full figure woman, or I never dated a short woman, or I never dated an African, or I never dated a Jamaican, or I never dated, and there's curious, they're curious. You understand what I'm saying? Um, so, and some of these women, they try to grab them, and they think that just because, they've been locked up 30 years, that that's going to be their property. And it's not going to be that. That's not what it's going to be. It's
yeah,
not,
I've actually seen that. I've seen that firsthand.
that's not what it's going to be. I don't think,
Not me doing it, but like I actually met a guy that was in prison for murder, younger, and then he actually fell in love with a prison guard, and then she actually got him out early because he was supposed to do life. Somehow she got him out, but then she wanted to control him, and he ended up going back to prison for 5 more years because he ended up like going in on her and this that the other and breaking his parole and this that the other and get like a domestic violence charge and then basically had to like restart his life all over again. But yeah,
yeah, that, and see, that comes from people not knowing what their triggers are. You know, everybody has a trigger. Some people trigger is the button has never been tapped. And some of these guys, man, they might have been doing something in their life, and it's just never been triggered. And when they get in and get into that act of rage, it could be deadly. Everybody has a trigger.
so would you suggest that women like be careful when they date guys out of prison with the triggers, or do you think it's just like you know,
Well, it's not about them being careful dating guys coming out of prison with a trigger. Everyone has a trigger. You could date a guy coming from Howard, and he has a trigger. He could be, a bookworm, and you say the wrong thing. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's where he can't handle it, and he don't know how to communicate with you behind it. You don't know what's gonna happen. It's almost like having. I don't know if I could use that as an example, but it's almost like having your dog. You know what I'm saying? He's a lovable dog, right? He's a lovable dog, and he's not gonna bite nobody. He's never bit nobody, but he's with a child. There's a child down playing with him, and the child is maybe sticking him in the eye or something, anything, that triggers that dog to lash out. And it goes for men and women. It has nothing to do with prison, you know what I'm saying? Because I mean, anybody is capable of it. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people
you
don't
don't
know.
think that a person that has been sitting in like
A lot of people
segregation.
don't even know what their triggers are. You know what I'm saying? Some people don't know. I know what my triggers are. Uh, and my triggers are I don't go to the strip club because I know I used to be in the strip club and I know you got to make it rain. So I ain't making it rain because I ain't making that kind of money no more. And I don't plan on going back the other way. So I don't go to the strip clubs, right? That's a trigger for me. You know what I'm saying? I don't carry guns. Why? Because let's say I'm driving down the street and a redneck spits on my car, calls me a nigger and spits on my car. If I have a gun, most likely I'm going to use it.
Right.
If I don't have a gun, then I could just cuss them out, bam, everybody leave, go home. And you understand what I'm saying?
Right.
So I know my triggers. Um, One of my biggest triggers, I don't argue with homosexuals. Nope. Don't argue with a homosexual. You can't win an argument with a homosexual, right? You just can't do it. So I'm not arguing with a homosexual. You got it. You got to learn these type of things because if you don't, then and you do it, it could be detrimental to your life and somebody else's life.
Right, right. I say.
You
So I know
know?
you said that your phone is about to die, but I want to
Yeah, my phone's about to die.
I want to find out some final thoughts of you about everything that we've been talking about here. I know we talked about mental health, we talked about your upbringing. I want to bring you back on to really discuss relationships and things like that. But I wanted to like introduce my audience to you first before I like do that. But I want to find out what your final thoughts are before your phone dies.
Final thoughts about what?
Just everything that we talked about here. What would you say
Well,
that the
I
surrounding?
just think I think that I think mental health is the elephant in the room. When it comes to us, interacting with each other. Um, Even if you're a mother and you have a son and they do things and they don't know why they're doing them, these are things that we have to deal with. We can't let it spark out of control to, say, oh, he just spoiled. Next thing you know, he didn't call you a bitch in your house. It's just so many different things. Um, um,
Is real quick, Regina Gold asked, is swinging different than polyamorous or the same?
yes, totally different. Yes.
What's the difference?
When we come back, maybe because my phone, I don't even see the red light, so it's going to be going off. But it's a huge difference.
We're gonna
You
bring
know,
you on and have that discussion and talk about that.
yes, because in polyamorous, that's not a relationship, and swinging is not a relationship. Swinging is something your partners do with other partners to have fun. When you're talking in a poly relationship, that's being in a relationship with someone, and you have a contract on, you know, y'all have an agreement on how y'all move in that particular relationship, in that open relationship.
Okay. Well, I just want to thank everybody for coming here. I know that Eric Baba Shaka is. Thank you so much for being a part of my panel. Thank you for answering the questions. We have heard so much, like some interesting things that we never even knew before. And I want to thank you for being a part of this. I want to thank everybody that was in the chat room and asking questions. And we're gonna bring you back again, and we can talk about relationships even more. So thank you so much.
Most definitely. Thank you. Lafayette.
Lafayette.